The ancient winds that swept over the Middle East carried whispers of old gods and forgotten legends, their echoes woven into the sands like a tapestry of power and ambition. Black Adam stood atop the crumbled remains of a once sacred temple, his dark eyes staring toward the horizon where the last traces of dusk bled into the night. The world had changed too much for his liking. Mortals, in their ever-growing hunger for control, had awakened ancient forces they did not understand, forces that had begun to distort the natural balance of existence. Black Adam had always seen himself as a necessary force, a ruler who would impose order where chaos thrived, and now as nations waged wars of steel and whispers of gods fell silent, he felt the need to rise once again. His powers surged within him, drawn from the 6 Egyptian deities, whose essence formed his being. He was as fast as the storm winds of Horus, strong as the pillars of Ammon, and immortal as the unbroken cycle of Mehen. He could see the curvature of the earth from where he hovered, the lightning of Aten coursing in his veins. To many he was a savior, to others a tyrant, but to himself he was the arbiter of what must be done, and what must be done now was clear. There was a presence moving across the dimensional rift, one that carried with it the scent of unstoppable destruction. Juggernaut's arrival was not heralded by any cosmic fanfare. There was no rift tearing open the sky, no trumpet of gods proclaiming his coming. He simply was. From the moment Cain Marco, the man beneath the crimson helmet, had reconnected with the gem of Cyttorak, the world had been forced to remember that some forces were not meant to be opposed. Juggernaut was not a conqueror in the traditional sense. He did not seek lands to rule or thrones to sit upon. His was a philosophy born of inevitability, momentum that cannot be halted, force that does not negotiate, a truth of existence that crushed pretense under its boots. Cain had long abandoned the illusion that he was a mere pawn of a god. The gem had made him more than mortal, and in that transformation he had come to understand something. Black Adam, for all his might and wisdom, still struggled with. The universe does not yield to the concept of justice or vengeance, it yields to the immutable laws that govern it. Entropy, momentum, the irreversible march of force. Juggernaut was that law given form. The first clash of their paths was inevitable, born from conflicting philosophies rather than mere happenstance. Black Adam sought to impose his will upon a world spiraling into disorder. Juggernaut was sent as the champion of Cyttorak, to ensure that the natural forces of motion and chaos were not shackled by tyrannical order. Neither saw himself as evil, but neither could allow the other to triumph without consequence. On a night heavy with thunderclouds, the air crackling with energy that hummed with the promise of divine wrath, the two titans finally stood in each other's presence. Black Adam, his cape whipping in the fierce desert wind, looked down upon the crimson-helmed behemoth whose very presence made the sand tremble. "You have trespassed upon sacred ground," Adam said, his voice a low rumble, ancient and commanding. "Leave now, and I will spare what remains of you." Juggernaut tilted his massive head, his arms crossed over a chest that could shrug off a barrage of tank shells without denting. "You still think power is about who commands and who obeys," he said, his voice carrying the weight of a landslide. "You fly around like a god, thinking the world bends because you tell it to. But what happens when you meet something that doesn't stop? What happens when your lightning hits a wall that never breaks?" The debate began before the blows. Black Adam, drawing upon Zehuti's wisdom, argued for the necessity of will, the belief that the world's chaos was a result of inaction, that only through forceful intervention could a golden age be maintained. To him, might was not simply the ability to destroy, but the responsibility to direct. "Power without purpose," he said, "is as meaningless as a storm that drowns both the wicked and the good." Juggernaut laughed, a sound like boulders grinding together. "Purpose is a word kings use to justify their grip on the world. I don't need purpose, I don't stop. That's the truth of it. A river doesn't ask the mountain why it stands, it wears it down, one unending motion at a time. That's real power." The storm above seemed to listen. Lightning crackled, but it did not yet fall. In the heart of that exchange, the philosophical rift between them widened. Black Adam represented the illusion of control, power used as a scalpel to carve destiny. Juggernaut was the raw force of inevitability. No matter how many times he was turned aside, no matter how many gods or heroes stood before him, he endured, he adapted, and he moved forward. It was not about whether he wanted to win. It was about whether anything in existence could make him stop. This was the seed that set the stage for their clash. Cities whispered of the coming cataclysm. Heroes and mortals alike looked to the horizon, sensing that two storms were about to meet. One forged of divine lightning and regal fury, the other born of crimson chaos and the eternal command of an elder god. The night before the battle, Juggernaut sat alone in the ruins of a war-torn outpost, his helmet resting beside him as the winds howled. There was no hatred in his eyes, only a strange patience. "He thinks he can change what the world is," he muttered, speaking to no one but the shadows. "I am what the world is, unstoppable, endless. It doesn't matter how hard he hits, how bright he shines. When the storm ends, the mountain will still crumble." And high above, in the cold silence of the upper atmosphere, Black Adam closed his eyes and let the cosmos whisper through him. He believed in destiny. He believed in the might of gods and the justice of kings. Yet somewhere deep within, he felt a flicker of unease. Juggernaut was no ordinary adversary. He was not powered by simple magic or fragile will. He was a force, and forces were not bargained with. The dawn would come with fire. The debate would end in ruin, and only one of their philosophies would remain standing in the dust. The desert became the arena, its sands stretching to infinity beneath a sun that burned white and merciless. When Juggernaut arrived, each step cracked the crusted earth, the gem of Cyttorak pulsing with a deep, malevolent glow. Black Adam descended from the storm clouds like a spear of judgment, the lightning of Atom snarling around his fists. They exchanged no more words. The debate had been set. Now it would be decided in the language both knew best: raw, unrelenting power. The first strike came from Adam, a streak of divine energy that tore the dunes apart and sent plumes of glassed sand into the air. Juggernaut staggered but did not fall. His laughter boomed across the desert, a sound that shattered the distant ridges. He began to run, each step a drumbeat of annihilation, and when his shoulder met Adam's chest, the sky itself cracked from the shockwave. Adam countered with lightning and speed, darting and striking like a living tempest. Juggernaut plowed forward, his momentum unyielding, his body absorbing the punishment with an indifference that bordered on cosmic arrogance. The sands became trenches, the dunes mountains of displaced fury. For every strike Adam landed, Juggernaut pressed one step closer. For every burst of godlike might, the unstoppable force simply endured. The battle was not just physical, it was the manifestation of their philosophies clashing. Purpose versus inevitability, will versus momentum. Hours passed in a storm of sand and thunder, and slowly, inexorably, the desert began to side with the Juggernaut. Each time Adam tried to lift him, to hurl him to the horizon, Juggernaut dug deeper, his connection to the gem of Cyttorak rooting him like an ancient obelisk. Each lightning bolt only seemed to illuminate the futility of trying to halt a force that did not recognize defeat. At the moment when Adam summoned the full might of his divine lineage, lightning cascading from the heavens, the strength of Ammon rippling through his strikes, Juggernaut caught him, his massive hands like iron bands. "You see," he growled, his voice low and certain, "you fight to change the world. I am the world. And the world doesn't stop because you want it to." With a single shattering motion, Juggernaut drove Adam into the desert floor, the impact creating a crater that swallowed dunes for miles. The air went still, the storm broke. Black Adam rose, defiant but slower now, the wisdom of Zehuti whispering a truth he did not wish to admit. Some forces cannot be overcome by will alone. The final exchange was not a grand explosion of power, but a quiet inevitability. Juggernaut pressed forward, his strides inexorable, his blows methodical. Adam fought with all the wrath of gods, but gods are still bound to the rules of motion, and motion belonged to Juggernaut. When at last Adam fell, it was not because he lacked strength, but because he faced something that rendered strength meaningless. Juggernaut stood over him, not gloating, not roaring, simply existing as unstoppable at the end as he had been at the start. "This isn't about thrones or lightning or names," he said, turning away as the sands swallowed their battlefield. "It's about what moves forward and what stays down." The desert reclaimed its silence, but the lesson lingered. Will is powerful, but inevitability is eternal.